Hello. I thought tonight we could talk about ancient myths. The old stories. The ones people told each other before there were books or electricity or a clear understanding of why the seasons changed. I've been thinking about myths lately because I saw a constellation the other night. Orion, the hunter, 3 stars in a row making his belt. And I thought about how someone thousands of years ago looked at those same stars and decided they looked like a belt. Like a hunter. That's interesting to me. That we saw the same thing, me and some person in ancient Greece or Mesopotamia or wherever Orion comes from. Same stars, same pattern, thousands of years apart. The myths are like that too. Same stories passed down, changed a little each time probably. But still here, still being told. I don't know all the myths, not even close, but I know some, and I think they're worth talking about. Not in a scholarly way. I'm not a scholar, just talking about them. The way you might talk about a strange dream you had. Interesting, a little confusing, maybe meaningful, maybe not. Let's just see where this goes. The Greeks had a lot of gods, too many probably. A god for everything, the sea, the sky, wine, wisdom, blacksmithing. There was even a god of the west wind, just the west wind specifically. The other directions had their own gods. This seems excessive, but I understand the impulse. When you don't know why things happen, you create reasons. You create personalities behind the forces. The sea isn't just water moving around randomly. It's Poseidon, and he has moods. He gets angry. He can be appeased. That's more comforting, in a way, than randomness. If a storm destroys your boat, it's not meaningless. It's because Poseidon was upset. Maybe you can figure out why. Maybe you can do better next time. Although, from what I understand about the Greek gods, they were pretty unpredictable anyway. So maybe it didn't help that much. Zeus, the main god, the king of the gods, spent most of his time in the myths turning into animals to seduce people. A swan, a bull, a shower of gold one time. Which, I don't understand how that works exactly. But that's what the myth says. These are very old stories. People take them seriously. Scholars study them. But also they're weird. Zeus turning into a swan. Athena being born fully formed out of Zeus's head wearing armor. It's like someone's fever dream. But it meant something to people. It explained their world. There's a myth about Persephone. She was the daughter of Demeter, who was the goddess of the harvest, of grain and growing things. One day Persephone was picking flowers in a field, and the ground opened up, and Hades, the god of the underworld, came out in his chariot and took her, kidnapped her, brought her down to the land of the dead to be his wife. Demeter was devastated. She searched everywhere for her daughter, and while she was searching, she neglected her duties. The crop stopped growing. Nothing would bloom. The world became cold and barren. Eventually, Zeus intervened. He worked out a deal. Persephone would spend part of the year in the underworld with Hades and part of the year above ground with her mother. And that's why we have seasons. When Persephone is in the underworld, Demeter grieves, and it's winter. When Persephone returns, Demeter rejoices, and it's spring. That's the myth. It's a sad story. About loss. About a mother missing her daughter. About compromise that doesn't really make anyone happy. But it's also beautiful. The idea that winter isn't just cold weather. It's grief, the earth mourning, and spring isn't just warmth returning. It's reunion, joy coming back. I think about this sometimes in March, when you can feel winter loosening its grip, when you see the first green shoots pushing through the last snow, Persephone coming home, Demeter breathing again. It's a nice way to think about it, even if it's not true. Even if seasons are actually caused by the Earth's axis tilting as it orbits the sun. The myth feels truer, somehow, more human. The Norse had different gods. Rougher gods, it seems like. Gods who fought giants and drank a lot, and had names that were hard to spell. Odin, Thor. Loki. Loki is interesting. He was the trickster god, always causing problems, playing pranks. But also, sometimes, solving problems with his tricks. He was complicated. Not good or evil. Just chaotic. There's a story where Loki cut off the hair of Sif, Thor's wife, as a prank, which seems mean-spirited. Thor was angry. Very angry. Thor was always very angry in these stories, so Loki had to fix it. He went to the dwarves, who were master craftsmen, and convinced them to make new hair for Sif. Hair made of gold. Real gold that would grow like real hair. And while he was at it, he had them make other gifts for the gods. Thor's hammer Mjolnir, Odin's spear, a magic ship that could fold up and fit in your pocket. So he caused a problem, but then he solved it, and actually made things better than they were before. That's Loki, chaos that sometimes leads to improvement. I knew someone like that once. My cousin Danny. He was always getting into trouble, breaking things, making messes. But he was also creative, energetic. He saw possibilities other people didn't see. He's a contractor now, does pretty well for himself. Still makes messes, but in a productive way. Maybe everyone needs a little Loki energy, not too much, but some. Enough to shake things up when they get too settled. The Norse myths end badly. There's a whole story about how the world ends. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Everything falls apart. The gods fight the giants in a final battle. Most of them die. The world is destroyed by fire and flood. Then it sinks into the sea. But, and this is important, after everything is destroyed, the world rises again, new and green. A few gods survive. 2 humans survive. They repopulate the earth. Life continues. So it's not really an ending. It's a cycle. Destruction and rebirth. I find this comforting, the idea that even when everything falls apart, even when the gods themselves die, something new grows. The story doesn't end. It just changes. Although it must have been frightening too, believing that. Knowing that one day everything you know will be destroyed. Even the gods can't stop it. But maybe that made people braver. If the gods themselves faced destruction with courage, then humans could too. We're all in this together, all temporary, all part of the cycle. I don't know. I'm not Norse, I'm from Michigan. But I think about these things sometimes. The Egyptians had interesting myths too, different from the Greeks and Norse, more concerned with death, with the afterlife. They believed that when you died, your soul went on a journey. You had to pass through gates, answer riddles, avoid monsters, and finally, you reached the Hall of Judgment. There, your heart was weighed on a scale. On one side, your heart. On the other side, a feather. The feather of Mart, which represented truth and justice. If your heart was lighter than the feather, if you had lived a good life, you could pass on to the afterlife. Paradise. The field of reeds, where everything was perfect and nothing hurt. But if your heart was heavier than the feather, weighed down by sin and cruelty, it would be eaten by Amit, a demon that was part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, and you would cease to exist. That's what they believed. That's what they built the pyramids for, to help people on that journey, to make sure they had everything they needed in the afterlife. I think about that weighing of the heart. It's a good metaphor, better than a list of sins, Abi, because it's not about specific rules, it's about weight, burden. Have you carried love or hate, kindness or cruelty? What have you been accumulating? I hope my heart would be light. I try to be kind, but I don't know. You can't weigh your own heart accurately. You're too close to it. Maybe that's why we need the feather, an objective measure, truth that isn't swayed by our own explanations and justifications, although I don't actually believe in the Hall of Judgment, or Amit. But the image stays with me, the heart on the scale, the feather weighting. It's a good reminder to be lighter, to let things go, to not accumulate weight. There's a Mesopotamian myth about a flood, older than the Noah story. Similar but different. A man named Utnapishtim was warned by a god that a great flood was coming. He built a boat, brought his family and animals and craftsmen. The flood came and destroyed everything, drowned the world. After many days the water receded. Utnapishtim sent out birds to find land. First a dove, which came back, then a swallow, which came back, then a raven, which didn't come back, which meant it had found land. So Utnapishtim and his boat landed on a mountain. He made a sacrifice to the gods. They smelled the sweet smoke and gathered around it like flies, the story says, which is a strange image. Gods like flies, drawn to the smell of burning meat. As a reward for surviving, Utnapishtim was given immortality. He and his wife would live forever on an island at the edge of the world. This sounds like a good deal. But later in the myths, when a hero named Gilgamesh finds Utnapishtim and asks him about eternal life, Utnapishtim seems tired, distant, like immortality isn't as great as you'd think. There's a sadness to it, living forever while everyone else dies. Watching the world change and change and change, never getting to rest. Maybe mortality is better. Maybe endings are important. They give things shape, meaning. A story without an ending is just events happening, but with an ending it becomes something, a narrative, a complete thought. I don't want to die, to be clear, but I'm glad that I will eventually, that there's a natural end point, that I don't have to just keep going and going like Utnapishtim forever, watching everything I love fade away. That seems lonely. Gilgamesh is one of the oldest stories we have, written down in cuneiform on clay tablets in ancient Sumeria. About 4,000 years ago, it's about a king named Gilgamesh who was too proud and too harsh. So the gods created a wild man named Enkidu to humble him, to be his equal. Gilgamesh and Enkidu fought at first, but then became best friends, brothers. They went on adventures together, fought monsters, cut down sacred trees, made the gods angry, as heroes in myths often do. But then Enkidu died, as punishment from the gods, or from illness. The tablet is damaged in that part, so we're not sure exactly what happened, but we know Gilgamesh was devastated. He mourned for 7 days and 7 nights. He couldn't accept that his friend was gone, that death was final, so he set out on a quest for immortality. He traveled to the edge of the world, faced trials, met Utnapishtim, learned the secret of eternal life, but in the end, he failed. He couldn't achieve immortality. He had to return home to his city and accept that he would die. That everyone dies. The story ends with him looking at the walls of his city Uruk, which he built, and realizing that this is his immortality, not living forever, but creating something that lasts, something that helps others. The walls would protect his people long after he was gone. That's what endures, not the individual, the work, the contribution. I think about this story more than maybe any other myth, because it's about the thing we all face, the thing we all struggle with, loss, death, the unfairness of it, and the answer the story gives isn't comforting exactly. You will die, your friends will die. Nothing can stop this. But you can build something. You can matter. You can leave the wall standing. It's 4,000 years old, this story, and we're still reading it, still thinking about it, still feeling what Gilgamesh felt. In a way, he did achieve immortality, just not the way he wanted. The Japanese have a myth about how the islands of Japan were created. A god and goddess, Izanagi and Izanami, stood on the floating bridge of heaven and stirred the ocean with a jeweled spear. When they lifted the spear, drops of brine fell from it and formed an island. They descended to this island and built a palace. They married. They created more islands. They created gods. It's a creation story, like many cultures have. But what interests me is what comes next. Izanami died giving birth to the fire god. Izanagi was so grief-stricken that he followed her to Yomi, the land of the dead, to bring her back. He found her in the darkness and begged her to return. She said she would ask the gods of Yomi for permission, but he must not look at her. He must wait in the dark. But Izanagi was impatient. He lit a torch, and he saw that Izanami was no longer beautiful. Death had changed her. She was decayed, rotting, covered in maggots. He fled in horror. Izanami, ashamed and angry, chased him. He barely escaped, blocking the entrance to Yomi with a boulder, and they spoke to each other from opposite sides of the boulder. She told him she would kill 1,000 people each day. He told her he would create 1,500 each day, and that's why there is death, but also why life continues. The balance. It's a sad story, about love that can't overcome death, about the impossibility of going back, about how death changes things fundamentally, and you can't pretend it doesn't. But also, it's about acceptance. Izanagi had to accept that his wife was gone. That death is permanent, that you block the entrance with a boulder and you move on. I lost someone once, not a spouse, a friend. It was sudden, a car accident, and I remember thinking in those first days that there must be some way to undo it. Some argument I could make, some deal I could strike, but you can't. The entrance is blocked. You don't get to go back. You just have to stand on this side of the boulder and keep living. Creating 1,500 new things each day. New moments, new connections, new reasons. The myth understood that, 4,000 years ago, or whenever it was first told. People have always known that. even if we keep forgetting. The Mayans had a creation myth where the gods tried several times to create humans. The first humans were made of mud, but they fell apart. They dissolved in water. They couldn't think or speak properly, so the gods tried again. They made humans out of wood. These humans could speak, they could multiply, but they had no hearts, no minds, no memories. They were empty. So the gods destroyed them with a flood and sent jaguars and eagles to hunt down the survivors. Finally, the gods made humans from maize, from corn, and these humans were perfect. They could think, they could worship, they remembered the gods and gave thanks. These are the humans that lasted. Us, according to the myth, were made of corn. I like this, the idea that it took several tries, that even gods make mistakes. That creation isn't perfect the first time. And I like that we're made of corn specifically, not something precious like gold or exotic like ambrosia. Corn, a crop, something practical and useful and humble. Corn sustained the Mayan civilization. It was sacred to them. So making humans from corn means we're made of the same stuff that sustains us. We're connected to the earth, to the harvest, to the cycles of planting and growing. There's something right about that. We are what we eat, literally, according to this myth. I grew up in the Midwest. Lots of corn, corn in every direction. And I never thought about it as sacred. Just corn. But maybe it is, maybe every field is holy in its way, continuing the creation. Making humans one ear at a time, that's probably not what the Mayans meant. But it's nice to think about. Prometheus is a Greek titan who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans. Before Prometheus, humans lived in darkness and cold. They were weak, helpless, at the mercy of nature and the gods. But Prometheus took pity on them. He climbed to Mount Olympus and stole fire from the god's hearth. He brought it down to earth and gave it to humanity. Fire meant warmth, light, the ability to cook food, to forge metal, to create civilization. Zeus was furious. Fire was meant only for the gods. By giving it to humans, Prometheus had upset the natural order, so Zeus punished him. He chained Prometheus to a rock in the mountains. Every day, an eagle would come and eat his liver. Every night, his liver would grow back. And the next day, the eagle would return. This went on for thousands of years, eternal torture, for the crime of helping humanity. Eventually Hercules freed him, but that's another story. The part I think about is the punishment. Specifically, why the liver? Why not his heart or his stomach or any other organ? Apparently, the Greeks believed the liver was the seat of emotion, of feeling. So the punishment wasn't just physical, it was emotional. The eagle ate his capacity to feel, and it regenerated, and it was eaten again. An eternal cycle of suffering. All because he helped people. There's something noble about that. Suffering for a good cause. Prometheus is the hero of the story, not Zeus. We remember him with admiration. The light bringer, the benefactor of mankind. But I also think about the eagle, just doing its job, coming back every day, eating liver, flying away. It probably didn't think about the morality of it. It was just an eagle. Eagles eat things. Sometimes in myths, the punishment is worse than the crime. Sometimes the gods are cruel, petty, human, but with power. That's probably the most realistic part. Power doesn't make you wise. It just makes you powerful. There's a Chinese myth about a woman named Chang'e who lives on the moon. The story goes, her husband, Hu Yi, was a great archer. He shot down 9 of the 10 suns that were scorching the earth. As a reward, he was given an elixir of immortality. But Hu Yi didn't want to be immortal without his wife. So he gave the elixir to Chang'e for safekeeping one day while Hu Yi was away. His apprentice tried to steal the elixir. Chang'e, to prevent him from getting it, drank it herself. The elixir made her float. She floated up and up, lighter than air, until she reached the moon. And there she stayed. Immortal, alone, separated from her husband forever. Hu Yi was heartbroken. He left offerings of food for her, hoping she could somehow receive them. And on the brightest full moons, people say you can see her on the moon's surface, still waiting. It's a story about sacrifice, about choices made in moments of crisis, about unintended consequences. Chang'e saved the elixir from being stolen but lost everything else. Her home, her husband, her life on Earth. I think about her sometimes when I see the moon, lonely up there. Immortal but isolated. Maybe she regrets drinking it. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe after thousands of years, she's made peace with it. There's a rabbit that lives with her, according to some versions, a jade rabbit that makes medicine with a mortar and pestle, so at least she has company. That helps a little, to imagine her not completely alone. Just mostly alone. The moon is bright tonight. Maybe Changi is looking back at us, at Earth, at all the life and noise and temporary beauty. Maybe she misses it. Or maybe she's fine. Maybe immortality on the moon is peaceful, quiet, away from all the complications of being human and mortal and tied to other people. I don't know which would be worse, being lonely forever or being okay with it. The Aboriginal Australians have myths, they call them dreamtime stories, about how the world was created, not by gods exactly. By ancestral beings who walked the earth in the dreamtime, shaping the land. They sang the world into existence. Every rock, every river, every tree has a song, and by singing the song, you can navigate the land. You can call the place into being again and again. This is called songline, the path of a song, the path of creation. I don't know much about this. It's not my culture. I'm an outsider looking in, trying to understand something profound that I'm not part of. But the idea moves me, that the land is made of songs. That creation isn't something that happened once long ago, but something that continues. Every time you sing, you're recreating the world, and that to know the land, you need to know its song, not just see it or map it, but sing it. I couldn't sing Michigan into being. I don't know its song. I know its roads and its towns and where the good diners are, but I don't know the deep story, the original creation. Maybe no one does anymore. Maybe those songs are lost. Or maybe they're still here, in a different form, in the stories we tell about the Great Lakes, in the names of rivers, in the way we describe winter to people who've never experienced it. Maybe we're all singing our worlds into being all the time. We just don't think of it as song. There's a West African myth about Anansi the spider. Anansi is a trickster like Loki, but different, smaller, cleverer. In one story, Anansi wants to buy all the stories in the world from the sky god. The sky god says he'll sell them, but the price is high. Anansi must bring him 3 impossible things: a python, a leopard, and a swarm of hornets. This seems impossible. Anansi is just a spider, small, weak. How could he capture these dangerous creatures? But Anansi is clever. He tricks the python into measuring itself against a pole, then ties it to the pole. He digs a pit and tricks the leopard into falling in. He pretends to argue with his wife about whether hornets can fill a gourd, and when the hornets try to prove they can, he traps them inside. He brings all 3 to the sky god, and the sky god, impressed, gives him all the stories. That's why stories are sometimes called spider stories in West African tradition, because Anansi won them with cleverness. I love this myth because it's about the power of intelligence over strength, about using what you have, even if what you have is just your wits. And I love that stories themselves have a story, that they had to be won, that they cost something, because stories do cost something. They cost attention, time, the effort of remembering and retelling. They cost the vulnerability of sharing them, but they're worth it, worth whatever Anansi paid, worth whatever we pay, because stories are how we understand the world, how we teach and learn and connect. They're more valuable than gold or jewels or any physical thing. Anansi knew that. He was just a spider, but he understood what mattered. In Irish mythology, there's a place called Tir na Nog, the land of youth, where no one ages, where there's no pain or sickness, where it's always summer and there's always music and food and beauty. Sometimes humans are invited there by the fairy folk. They go and spend what feels like a few days or weeks in paradise. But when they return to Ireland, they find that hundreds of years have passed. Everyone they knew is dead. The world has moved on without them. There's a story about a man named Oisín who went to Tir na Nog with a fairy woman. He stayed for 3 years, or what he thought was 3 years. When he returned, 300 years had passed. He was warned not to dismount from his horse, not to touch the ground of Ireland. If he did, all those years would catch up with him at once. But he saw people struggling to move a boulder. He leaned down to help. The strap broke. He fell from his horse. He touched the ground. And instantly he aged 300 years. He became ancient, withered. He died moments later. It's a sad story about the impossibility of going back, about how time moves differently in different places, different states of mind. When you're happy, time flies. When you're suffering, it crawls. We all know this. The myths just make it literal. I think about Oisin sometimes when I'm doing something I enjoy, reading, walking, talking with a friend. Time passes without me noticing, and then I look up and hours have gone by. That's Tir na Nog, those small moments of timelessness, of being so present that you forget time exists. But you can't stay there. Eventually you have to touch the ground, return to regular time, to aging and change and loss. The trick is not to regret the time in Tir na Nog, not to wish you could go back. Just to be grateful you got to visit at all. The Inuit have a myth about Sedna, the goddess of the sea. The story varies, but in one version she was thrown from her father's kayak during a storm. She tried to climb back in, but her father cut off her fingers to make her let go. Her fingers fell into the water and became seals. Her hands became walruses. Her arms became whales. She sank to the bottom of the ocean and became the mother of all sea creatures. The goddess who controls the animals that the Inuit hunt. When she's angry, when humans have broken taboos or acted with disrespect, she tangles her hair and withholds the animals. The hunters come home empty-handed. People go hungry. The only way to appease her is for a shaman to travel to the bottom of the ocean and comb her hair, to calm her, to show respect. It's a harsh story, about a woman betrayed by her father, about sacrifice, about how human cruelty creates the forces we depend on, but it's also about relationship, about how we're connected to the animals we hunt, to the sea, to the natural world. We take from it, but we also have responsibilities, respect, care. If we're careless or cruel, Sedna knows. And she responds, I don't hunt. I buy my food at a grocery store. The connection between me and the animals I eat is distant, abstract. Someone else killed them. Someone else cut them into pieces and wrapped them in plastic. But the principle remains. The world provides, but we have to be respectful, careful, not wasteful or cruel. Sedna's hair is always there, waiting to be tangled, waiting to remind us. There's a Polynesian myth about Maui, a trickster hero who slowed down the sun. The sun used to move across the sky too quickly. There wasn't enough daylight to get work done, to fish, to cook, to live properly. So Maui decided to do something about it. He made ropes from his sister's hair. He traveled to the place where the sun rises. He set a trap. When the sun came up, Maui caught it in his ropes. He beat it with a magic jawbone until the sun agreed to move more slowly across the sky. And that's why we have long days now, because Maui fought the sun and won. I love this myth, the audacity of it. The sun is too fast. Fine. I'll slow it down, I'll fight the sun itself. There's something very human about that, looking at a fundamental force of nature and saying, no, that's not working for me. I'm going to change it. We do this all the time now. We dam rivers. We clear forests. We change the chemistry of the atmosphere. We fight nature constantly, trying to bend it to our needs. Sometimes it works. Sometimes we get longer days, metaphorically speaking. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes we tangle Sedna's hair and wonder why the fish are gone. But we keep trying. We're like Maui, audacious, confident, armed with tools and determination. I hope we're also wise enough to know when to fight and when to accept, when to slow the sun and when to let it be. Maui knew. He didn't try to stop the sun completely. Just slow it down. Just make it work better. That's the balance. Change what needs changing. Accept what doesn't. I'm getting tired. Are you tired? I hope so. That's the point of this, I think. To talk about these old stories in a gentle way until sleep seems like a good idea. The myths are old, older than countries, older than languages, some of them. Just stories people told each other around fires, trying to make sense of things. Why does the sun move? Why do we die? Why is there winter? Why do bad things happen to good people? The myths don't always give good answers. Sometimes they give strange answers. Gods turning into swans, spiders winning stories, women living on the moon. But they give an answer, a way of thinking about things, a shape for the confusion. And maybe that's enough. Maybe we don't need perfect explanations. Just stories that feel true enough, that help us live with the mystery. Before you fall asleep, think about your favorite myth. Or if you don't have one, think about a story someone told you when you were young. Something that stuck with you. Maybe it was about a monster, or a hero, or just about why things are the way they are. Hold that story for a moment. Feel its shape, its weight, the way it's been carried through time from person to person, until it reached you. Thank it quietly for being there, for giving you something to think about, some way of understanding. Then let it go, let it drift away. Let your mind settle into the quiet space between stories. Tomorrow the myths will still be there, still waiting to be told, still offering their strange wisdom. But for now, rest. The stories understand. They've been waiting for thousands of years. They know how to wait through one more night. Sleep well. The myths will keep watch. Gilgamesh and Anansi, Sedna and Changi, Maui and Prometheus, all the old friends, all the old stories, patient, eternal, true in their way. Good night.